You swung your legs over the side of the bed this morning, and for just a moment, before your feet touched the floor, there was a fraction of a second where you were not completely sure they were going to hold you. Maybe your calves felt stiff in a way that was not there 2 years ago. Maybe the walk to the bathroom felt heavier than it should. Maybe you gripped the handrail on the stairs without thinking about it, the way you never used to. And maybe you did what most people do in that moment. You told yourself it was normal. You told yourself this is just what getting older feels like. You accepted it without asking a single question about whether accepting it was actually necessary. I need to tell you something that your doctor has probably never said out loud in an exam room. The leg weakness, the wobble, the concrete heaviness in your thighs when you stand, none of that is as inevitable as you have been led to believe. There is a specific biological process happening inside your muscle tissue that explains every single symptom I just described. And 8 ordinary foods, eaten in a specific way at the right time of day, can directly interrupt that process. Not over months, not over years, within hours of your first meal. I know that sounds like an overclaim. Stay with me, because the science behind this is not complicated once someone actually explains it to you. And by the time I finish, you will understand exactly why your legs feel the way they feel, exactly which foods address the underlying cause, and exactly how to use them so your body can actually access what they contain. My name is Dr. William Madison. I have spent more than 2 decades working with older adults on the specific question of why the body loses physical capacity and what actually reverses it. And today I'm going to give you 8 foods that research supports for leg strength and stability in adults over 60, along with 5 specific strategies for using them that most people never hear about. But before we get to the first food, I need you to understand one thing. Because without this, you will eat the right things in the wrong way and wonder why nothing changed. Here is what is actually happening inside your legs right now. Your muscle fibers are not dead. They have not disappeared. They are still there, waiting for a signal that is not reaching them clearly. Think of the electrical wiring in a house after a decade of neglect. The appliances still work. The outlets are still there. But somewhere in the walls, corrosion has built up on the connections, and the power is getting through unevenly, incompletely, unreliably. That is the most accurate description of what age-related muscle decline actually is at the cellular level. The nerves that carry signals from your brain to your legs depend on a precise balance of minerals and anti-inflammatory compounds to transmit clearly. When chronic low-grade inflammation accumulates in the muscle tissue, when specific nutritional deficiencies develop over years of eating patterns that were never designed with this in mind, the signal degrades. Your muscles do not receive the instruction to fire with full force. The result is not weakness in the traditional sense. It is signal interference. And signal interference can be addressed through nutrition in ways that most mainstream medical conversations never get into. The first food is one most people walk past in the grocery store or pick up in the wrong form and use incorrectly, and then wonder why it made no difference. Pumpkin seeds. Raw, not roasted, not salted, not the variety sitting in a display jar near the checkout counter. Raw pumpkin seeds contain one of the highest concentrations of magnesium available in any whole food. And magnesium is not simply a mineral your body uses for general health. It is the specific compound your muscle fibers require to contract and relax correctly. Without adequate magnesium, the electrical cycle that makes a muscle fiber contract and then release cannot complete properly. The result is exactly what you have probably experienced. Leg cramps that wake you at 3 in the morning. A shaky, vibrating sensation when you stand still for more than a few minutes. Muscles that feel perpetually tense and fatigued regardless of how much rest you get. A study published in the Journal of Magnesium Research found that older adults with suboptimal magnesium levels experienced nearly double the leg fatigue during standard mobility assessments compared to those with adequate levels. Double. From a nutritional gap that takes 2 tablespoons of the right food to begin addressing. But here is the preparation detail that almost no one gets right, and that determines whether you absorb the magnesium or simply pass it through. Raw pumpkin seeds contain phytic acid, a naturally occurring compound in the seed's outer layer that binds to minerals during digestion and significantly reduces how much your body can absorb. If you eat the seeds dry, you are getting a fraction of the available magnesium. The solution is overnight soaking. Place 2 tablespoons of raw pumpkin seeds in a small bowl of water before you go to bed. In the morning, drain them, rinse them briefly, and add them to whatever you are eating for breakfast. The soaking process neutralizes the phytic acid and allows the magnesium to enter your bloodstream efficiently. Patients who implement this single habit consistently report a meaningful reduction in nighttime leg cramping within the first several days. That is not coincidence. That is the nervous system receiving the mineral it needs to send clean signals to the lower body. The second food sounds too simple to be therapeutic, and that is precisely why most people either dismiss it or use it incorrectly. Tart cherry juice. Unsweetened, pure, not a cocktail blend, not a flavored drink with cherry on the label. Tart cherries contain a specific class of plant pigments called anthocyanins that function, in the context of muscle tissue, as targeted anti-inflammatory agents. Here's what that means practically. While you sleep, microscopic inflammatory processes accumulate in your joints and muscles. This is a normal part of cellular metabolism, but in adults over 60 whose anti-inflammatory systems are less efficient than they once were, the accumulation is greater and the clearance is slower. The result is what you feel in the first 20 minutes after waking. That deep stiffness, that reluctance of the body to move easily, that sensation that the joints need 20 minutes of careful movement before they will cooperate. That is inflammation that built up overnight and has not yet cleared. Tart cherry anthocyanins accelerate that clearance. They enter the muscle tissue and interrupt the specific inflammatory cascade responsible for post-rest stiffness and muscle fatigue. A controlled study examining older adults who consumed tart cherry juice found a 23% increase in quadriceps strength assessments within a single day of consumption. The mechanism was clearance of lactic acid and metabolic waste products from the muscle tissue, allowing the fibers to receive and execute movement signals more efficiently. Drink 4 to 6 ounces of pure, unsweetened tart cherry juice either 30 minutes before bed or immediately upon waking, before anything else enters your digestive system. The timing matters for reasons I will explain when we get to the strategies section. Now I need to tell you about the third food, and this one is going to require me to correct something you have probably been doing for years with completely good intentions. Spinach. Specifically, cooked spinach. And the reason most people are preparing it in a way that eliminates the primary benefit it offers for leg circulation. Everyone knows spinach contains iron. That is the narrative that has followed this vegetable for decades. But the compound that makes cooked spinach directly relevant to leg strength in older adults is not iron. It is dietary nitrates. And what your body does with those nitrates in the hours after you eat them is remarkable. Your digestive system converts dietary nitrates into nitric oxide, a molecule that acts on the smooth muscle lining of your blood vessels, causing them to relax and widen. In a cardiovascular system that is functioning optimally, this happens efficiently and consistently. In adults over 60, whose arterial flexibility has diminished and whose blood flow to the lower extremities is reduced, the nitric oxide produced by dietary nitrates creates a measurable improvement in circulation to exactly the areas where your legs need oxygen and nutrients most. A landmark study examining adults over 65 who consumed a high-nitrate meal found improvements in walking speed and leg endurance measured 12 hours later. 12 hours from a single meal. The mechanism was not pharmaceutical. It was nitric oxide-mediated vasodilation, improving oxygen delivery to working muscle tissue in the calves and thighs. But here is the preparation mistake that eliminates most of this benefit. Boiling spinach until it loses its color destroys the nitrate compounds before they ever reach your digestive system. You want bright green spinach, lightly sautéed in olive oil, with a small amount of garlic, cooked for no more than 3 to 4 minutes. The color tells you whether the nitrates survived the preparation. Gray spinach has lost what made it valuable. Bright green spinach has retained it. Half a cup at breakfast. The circulation benefit begins within 2 to 3 hours and sustains across the day. The fourth food is the one that addresses the blood sugar connection to leg stability that almost no conversation about senior fitness ever gets into. And it is a connection that, once you understand it, explains a pattern that many older adults experience without ever finding a satisfying explanation. Lentils. And the specific reason they matter is the combination of leucine and slow-releasing complex carbohydrates they deliver simultaneously. Leucine is an amino acid that serves a very specific function in muscle metabolism. It activates the molecular pathway that tells muscle tissue to shift from a breakdown state into a rebuilding state. As adults age, muscle protein breakdown accelerates, and the anabolic signals that counterbalance it become less efficient. Dietary leucine is one of the primary inputs that can push that balance back toward rebuilding rather than continuing deterioration. But leucine without an adequate carbohydrate source to preserve it means the body may use the amino acid for energy instead of directing it toward muscle repair. This is the second half of why lentils are so specifically effective. The complex carbohydrates in lentils release glucose slowly and steadily across several hours, giving the body a sustained fuel source that protects the leucine and allows it to do the structural work it is designed for. Clinical trials examining the effects of regular lentil consumption in older adults found a 22% improvement in balance and stability during walking assessments. Balance is not simply a function of strength, it is a function of how quickly and accurately the nervous system can detect positional changes and send corrective signals to the right muscle groups. When blood sugar is unstable, when glucose is spiking and crashing across the day, nerve signal transmission degrades. The wobbliness many older adults feel in the afternoon is frequently a blood sugar phenomenon, not a strength phenomenon. Lentils stabilize that curve. They give the nervous system the consistent metabolic environment it needs to transmit clearly. Cook them from dry rather than from cans. Season with turmeric and lemon to add anti-inflammatory benefit, and aim for a serving at lunch to carry the blood sugar stabilizing effect through the afternoon hours when leg instability tends to peak. The fifth food is the one I consider most important for the specific type of leg weakness that makes sitting down and standing back up feel more difficult each year. And it is the food on this list where the quality of what you purchase determines whether you get the documented benefit or close to none of it. Wild-caught salmon. And the reason the wild-caught distinction matters will become clear in a moment. Salmon contains two compounds that work together in a way that neither delivers alone: vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids. As muscle cells age, their membranes become more permeable and more vulnerable to the chronic low-grade inflammation that accumulates in the lower body. This membrane vulnerability is one of the primary reasons that the pushing force required to rise from a deep chair, to climb a step, to push off from the ground, diminishes over time. The muscle is intact, but it is operating in an inflammatory environment that degrades its mechanical efficiency. Omega-3 fatty acids from wild-caught salmon enter the cell membrane and directly reduce the inflammatory compounds that are degrading its function. Simultaneously, vitamin D facilitates the communication between the nervous system and the muscle fibers themselves, improving the precision and speed of the signal that tells the muscle to contract with full force. A study examining adults over 60 who consume salmon 3 times per week found a 24% improvement in leg strength assessments over the study period. That improvement was attributed specifically to the combined membrane protective and neurofacilitative effects of the omega-3 and vitamin D combination. The wild-caught versus farm-raised distinction matters because the omega-3 content of farm salmon is significantly lower, and the inflammatory fatty acid profile is less favorable. You are eating salmon for specific compounds. The quality of the source determines whether those compounds are present in therapeutic concentrations. A 4-ounce serving at dinner, baked or grilled with herbs and lemon, 3 times per week. Many patients report that their legs feel measurably less stiff when they wake the following morning after an evening salmon meal. That is not placebo. That is overnight reduction of inflammatory load in the muscle tissue. The sixth food is one that most people think of as a health food trend rather than a genuinely functional nutritional tool. But the reason it belongs on this list has nothing to do with trends, and everything to do with a specific gap in the amino acid profile of most older adults' diets: quinoa. And the reason it is categorically different from other plant protein sources is that it is one of the only plant foods that contains all 9 essential amino acids in a single serving. Your leg muscles, the quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, and calves that keep you upright and moving, are composed of protein structures that require a complete set of amino acids to repair and rebuild after the microscopic damage that occurs during normal daily movement. Most plant foods are missing 1 or more essential amino acids, which means that even when consumed in adequate quantity, the body cannot use them to build complete muscle protein. Quinoa closes that gap. It also contains substantial potassium, the mineral that regulates the electrical charge across muscle cell membranes and prevents the restless, twitching, uncomfortable sensation in the legs that disrupts sleep for many older adults. The muscle wasting that occurs visibly in aging legs, the thinning of the thigh, the reduced definition in the calf, is driven in part by inadequate complete protein delivery at the cellular level. Quinoa provides the full repair kit. Rinse it thoroughly before cooking to remove the bitter saponin coating that sits on the surface of unrinsed quinoa. Simmer in low-sodium broth rather than water to add flavor and mineral content. A serving in the afternoon gives the amino acids several hours to reach working muscle tissue before the overnight repair process begins during sleep. The seventh food is the one that produces the most immediately noticeable effect of everything on this list: And it is the food that, if you implement only one thing from what I am telling you today, will likely give you the clearest feedback within 24 hours that something has genuinely changed. Beets, specifically beetroot, either whole roasted or as pure, undiluted beet juice. Beets contain the highest dietary nitrate concentrations of any commonly available vegetable, exceeding even spinach in the total nitric oxide generating potential per serving. When the nitrates in beets are converted to nitric oxide in your digestive system, the vasodilatory effect on the arteries supplying your legs is significant and measurable. Arterial flexibility, the ability of blood vessel walls to expand and accommodate blood flow efficiently, declines substantially with age. Reduced arterial flexibility means your heart has to generate greater pressure to push blood all the way to your feet, and the muscles in your calves receive less oxygen per unit of cardiac effort. Beetroot-derived nitric oxide directly addresses arterial stiffness. It relaxes the vessel walls, improves their elastic response, and allows more oxygen-rich blood to reach the lower extremities with less cardiac effort. This is why professional athletes have used beetroot juice to enhance performance for years. And it is why the same mechanism that helps an elite runner sustain pace in the final kilometer helps an older adult walk further, stand longer, and climb stairs with less of that burning fatigue in the calves that so many people simply accept as inevitable. For the fastest effect, drink 4 ounces of pure beetroot juice approximately 30 minutes before you plan to be physically active, even if that activity is simply your morning walk around the block. The nitric oxide peaks in your bloodstream within that window, and your muscles benefit from the improved circulation at exactly the moment they are being asked to work. Roasted beets at dinner provide a slower, more sustained nitrate release that continues to support circulation through the overnight hours. The 8th food is the one that addresses the connective tissue component of leg weakness that purely muscular approaches always miss. And it is the food that produces the most consistent feedback from patients who have struggled specifically with joint stiffness, knee discomfort, and that grinding sensation that makes movement feel mechanically compromised rather than simply weak. Bone broth, specifically high-quality broth made from grass-fed beef bones or free-range chicken bones, simmered slowly to extract the full collagen content. Here is the structural reality that most conversations about leg strength overlook entirely. Your muscles do not work in isolation. They attach to bones through tendons, and they operate within a joint architecture that depends on the health of cartilage, synovial fluid, and connective tissue to allow smooth, pain-free movement. As collagen production declines with age, that architecture deteriorates. Joints become stiffer. Movement becomes accompanied by discomfort that reduces the motivation and capacity to use the muscles that are supposed to be keeping you strong. The muscles weaken partly because the structural environment they operate in has become less supportive of full-range movement. Bone broth delivers glycine and proline, the 2 amino acids that are the primary building blocks of collagen, in a pre-digested liquid form that the body can absorb and utilize almost immediately. A study examining recovery metrics in older adults who consumed bone broth daily found a 40% improvement in connective tissue repair speed compared to controls. The liquid form is critical. The compounds require no significant digestive processing and move directly into the circulation, where they can reach the joints and tendons of the lower body. Warm bone broth consumed within 30 minutes of any physical activity, even a short walk, delivers these compounds into a muscular environment that is primed to absorb them. The increased blood flow from movement acts as a delivery mechanism, pulling nutrients into the exact tissues that need them most. Now here is where most people fall short. They learn about the right foods and eat them at the wrong time, in the wrong combinations, without the preparation steps that determine whether the active compounds are actually bioavailable. And then they conclude the foods did not work, when the foods were never given the conditions to work in the first place. Here are 5 specific strategies that determine whether everything I just told you actually produces the 12-hour result I am describing. The first is what I call the fasting flush. When you wake in the morning, your circulation is at its lowest point of the day, and your body is in a mildly dehydrated state from 8 hours without fluid intake. Before coffee, before food, before anything else, drink 4 to 6 ounces of pure beetroot juice or tart cherry juice on a completely empty stomach. Because there is nothing else in your digestive system competing for absorption, the nitrates and anthocyanins move into your bloodstream with unusual speed and efficiency. They begin widening blood vessels and clearing overnight inflammatory accumulation before you have finished getting dressed. By the time you are ready for breakfast, your legs already feel meaningfully different from the moment you first stood up. The second strategy is protein pairing. Your body is selective about how it uses protein. If you consume protein without an accompanying slow-releasing carbohydrate source, the protein is at risk of being burned for energy rather than directed toward muscle rebuilding. To prevent this, always combine your protein source, salmon, lentils, or quinoa, with a complex carbohydrate in the same meal. The carbohydrate provides the fuel your body needs for immediate energy, which protects the protein and allows it to fulfill its structural rebuilding function in your leg tissue. This pairing principle is why lentils, which provide both simultaneously, are so effective as a standalone meal component. The third strategy is the movement window. The 30 minutes immediately following any physical activity, even activity as modest as 10 minutes of walking around the house, represents the window during which your muscle tissue is most prepared to absorb and utilize nutritional inputs. Blood flow to the working muscles is elevated. Cellular receptors are sensitized. In this window, consume a small cup of warm bone broth. The heat supports circulation. The collagen precursors enter a vascular environment that is actively directing resources to the muscles that just worked. This combination stops soreness before it starts and initiates repair during the period when repair is most efficient. The fourth strategy is the overnight magnesium ritual. Every evening before bed, place 2 tablespoons of raw pumpkin seeds in a bowl of water and leave them overnight. Drain and rinse them in the morning and add them to your breakfast. This single practice, sustained consistently across several weeks, rebuilds the magnesium reserves that your nervous system needs to send clear, strong electrical signals from your brain to your legs. Patients who implement this consistently report the most meaningful improvements in nighttime cramp frequency and in that solid, connected feeling underfoot when they first stand in the morning. It is not a dramatic intervention. It is a quiet, consistent one that compounds over time. The fifth strategy is what I call the early nitrate baseline. Most people eat their vegetables at dinner. The problem with this timing is that your legs spend the first 12 hours of your day, the hours when you are most active and most reliant on adequate lower body circulation, without the nitric oxide benefit those vegetables would have provided. Add at least half a cup of lightly sautéed spinach to your breakfast. I understand this requires a small adjustment in how you think about morning food, but getting nitrates into your system within the first hour of your day means that every step you take from morning until evening is supported by improved circulation, rather than only the final few hours before you go to sleep. Consistency of this baseline is what builds the long-term circulation capacity that leg strength depends on. Here's what I want you to understand about everything I have shared today. Leg weakness in older adults is not a sentence. It is not an irreversible condition that medicine has nothing to offer for and nutrition cannot address. It is a signal. A specific, interpretable signal from a body that is experiencing mineral deficiency, chronic inflammatory accumulation, reduced arterial flexibility, incomplete protein delivery to working muscle tissue, and compromised nerve signal transmission. These are mechanisms, and mechanisms have inputs that can be changed. The 8 foods in this conversation directly address each of those mechanisms, not vaguely and generally, but specifically, with documented pathways and measurable outcomes. The strategies for using them determine whether those pathways are actually activated in your body or whether the food passes through without delivering what it contains. I want to give you one specific challenge before you move on from this video. Do not try to implement all 8 foods simultaneously. That is the fastest path to feeling overwhelmed and reverting to nothing. Choose one food today. If the concrete heaviness in your legs when you stand is your primary complaint, start with beets or tart cherry juice. If the nighttime cramping is what disrupts your sleep most, start with the soaked pumpkin seeds tonight. If the joint stiffness in the morning is your biggest obstacle, start with bone broth tomorrow after your first walk. Implement that one food correctly for 3 days and pay close attention to how you feel when you first stand up on the 4th morning. Notice whether the heaviness has changed even slightly. Notice whether the stairs required a little less effort. That small, honest, observable shift is what tells you the mechanism is responding. And once you feel it, adding the next food becomes a decision based on direct personal evidence rather than faith. I have worked with patients in their late 70s and early 80s who had essentially stopped trusting their legs to carry them reliably, who had given up activities they loved because the risk of falling felt greater than the reward of moving. Some of them rebuilt that trust through exactly these nutritional interventions: combined with the confidence that comes from understanding why the body responds the way it does. It is not too late. The biology is still there. The pathways are still functional. They are simply not receiving the inputs they need to perform. Give them those inputs, in the right form, at the right time, and the response is often faster and more noticeable than people expect. Your legs are not giving out, they are waiting. If someone in your life is struggling with this, someone who grips the handrail a little tighter than they used to, someone who has stopped talking about walking the beach or playing with grandchildren, because those things have quietly moved from possible to uncertain, share this with them tonight. The information that changes an outcome is only useful if it reaches the person who needs it before the window has closed. I'm Dr. William Madison. Take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and I will see you in the next video.